Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 176. Today on the podcast, Jen speaks with Alicia Dunams about what to say when you are sexually harassed at work.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast with me, Jen Swanson, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career.
Have you been sexually harassed at work? Has someone said something to you on purpose or inadvertently that crosses the line? And have you wondered what the heck to say? Maybe you haven't said anything. Maybe you've brushed it off. Maybe you've gone home and muttered about it afterwards and wished you'd had the tools to say something effective, appropriate, and helpful at the time. Well, stick around, because in this important episode, guest expert and author Alicia Dunams shares her exact script of what to say so that both you and the person who has offended can move forward with dignity. Alicia Dunams is an international leadership trainer and business strategist. She has coached thousands of leaders, executives, and industry experts to share their message with the world through her acclaimed signature process called Bestseller in a Weekend and other professional development training programs. She's an author, and she's been featured on Good Morning America, KTLA News, and The Steve Harvey Show. And so I am turning you over to our conversation with Alicia so that you can find out exactly what to say and when right after this. Do you want someone to listen? Do you need help setting goals for yourself? Do you want someone to keep you accountable for your progress and to ask good questions that will help to move you toward your success? Have you got a resume that you want reviewed or updated? Do you need help deciding what kind of work you'd like to transition into? If any of these sound like you, I've got some coaching spaces open at Careers by Jen, and I would be happy to work with you to achieve your goals. From a single session resume review to multi-session career or life coaching, there are several packages to choose from. Go to careersbyjen.com, click on online programs, and you will see the coaching packages on the courses page. Select your package and let's get started on your future today. So welcome to the show, Alicia. It's great to have you here.
So good to be here, Jennifer. Thank you for the invite.
Before we get right into the topic of what to say if you are sexually harassed at work, I want to know a little bit about how you came to be doing all of the things that you are doing today.
Well, that is a great question to get started. We're going to be talking about my book today called I Get To, How Using the Right Words Can Radically Transform Your Life, Relationships, and Business. And I can reverse engineer how I got here. Oh my goodness. It's been an amazing road. I actually wrote a book 11 years ago, and the name of my book, it was geared towards a young female audience. It's called Goal Digger: Lessons Learned from the Rich Men I Dated. So it's an interesting path since then. I have been an entrepreneur for 17 years. So I went straight from UCLA. I actually backpacked around the world for a year to find myself. Then I kind of came back into the world and started a business, had a baby, and here we go. I'm 42 years old and now talking about language. And I would say part of that is my business is called Bestseller in a Weekend. I support thought leaders, business owners, CEOs in writing a book. And what I found through that process is we work with a lot of languaging. What you say, you create. And so I found that that what the words we use in our life really dictate the life that we create. And so even just when I wrote my book 11 years ago, even the title of my book, it's just so interesting how I was talking about mindset principles that I found with the successful men that I met and networked with. And it's a tongue in cheek, but really about this book specifically, I have just been listening. I have been, networking, whether it's because in addition to teaching Best on a Weekend, I'm also a leadership coach, and I have several leadership trainings that I do in corporations around diversity issues, unconscious bias, issues around storytelling as a way to connect coworkers. And so it's just been like a kind of a culmination of what I find is the biggest principles to create the life that you want. And it's by the words that we use.
Right. And I don't know if you're familiar, you must be familiar with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. I took training in that myself, and words are powerful. They make such a difference in the communication and the relationships. So if we're talking about sexual harassment at work, which is everywhere right now, it seems to be a hot topic because people are talking about things that happened recently and things that happened 20 years ago, and it's pervasive. What do you say, and where do you begin with helping people understand how to respond if something inappropriate is said to them or done to them at work?
I think the really important thing is around the words you use is it's not just the words you use, it is the intonation behind the words you use. In addition, it is the body language around the words you use. And it's also, are you energetically aligned with the words that you use? So it's kind of a trifecta, if you will. So it's the words, it's the energy behind it, which in the intonation and body language. And when it comes to what's happening right now in terms of the workplace, even outside of the workplace, around relationships, sexual harassment, I want to approach this, and I believe that it behooves us as a community, as a world, to come from a neutral space when it comes to approaching sexual harassment. Both men and women can be sexually harassed. And what we're seeing with the hashtag Me Too movement is we are seeing things that maybe happened 5, 10, 20 years ago. So the first thing that I want to really leave the audience with is to address it when it is happening. Address it in the moment. Now, the only pause I would say is to take a pause. When it is happening, when an inappropriate conversation is happening, when a difficult conversation is happening, it is to take a breath, because you want to make sure that you are in a response place and not in a reactive place. Very important. But with that, I encourage you not to leave it for weeks, months, and years, to address it in the moment. And that's the setup in terms of the communication script that I have in my book. I have 40 communication scripts. They're not all around this particular topic. They're around creating the life you want. They're around communication, relationships. But I think this is really important, because what it does is when you use your voice, you get to regain the power. And that's really important, because there are the voiceless, and sometimes the voiceless are voiceless because they don't know what to say, or they feel afraid to say it. And the really important thing here is, if you don't address it in the moment, then that person can go on and do it more. So it's really being courageous. So in particular, the script that I have is the following. There is a line, and to be clear, you just crossed it. There's a line, and to be clear, you just crossed it. The reason that you come from that place, again, I said being neutral, so not being attached to what was just said to you, taking that pause, taking that breath, that you have thoughts that this person just sexually harassed you. You are not their words. And using your voice, not only do you regain your power, but you call them forth, not out. You call them forth. And that's really important because this conversation gets to be a we conversation, not me against you or us against them. That doesn't serve the world.
Can I just ask before we go on about what do you think has shifted as far as people's ability to speak in the moment? Because I know even for myself, when I was working in the hospital, when I was 19, 20 years old, I had a physician, a surgeon walk into the elevator and shut the lights off and think that that was really funny when I was in the elevator. And, turned the lights back on and went, ha, 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 just made some obviously sexual connotation. And, 19, 20 years old, I had been a server for years and all sorts of stuff. And I was just used to this. And I was used to ignoring it. And I just wonder what the shift is now that people feel that they have permission or that it's safer somehow to actually take that breath and then speak.
Yes, I think a lot of that is with the hashtag Me Too movement. And that's been the beauty of the movement. But at the same, let me use my words correctly. And at the same time, we get to use it as a way to call people forth because guess what, Jennifer? Everyone has a past.
Yep.
Everyone has made a misstep. And we see major leaders, players, media people being called out. Absolutely. This is the process. This is what's happening. And if we go into everyone's background, we all have something that could even be equally as damning. So with this, there is definitely a wave of empowerment. Absolutely. And even better, what I want for everyone to hear out there is this is an opportunity to call people forth, not out.
And what do you mean by that?
And when you call people out, it's an us against you. It's an us against them conversation. It's a me against you. And I just had a conversation with this on another podcast. And when you call people forth, it's how can I support you? How can we grow from this particular experience? And in those difficult conversations, when they're had in the moment, what happens is a greater connection, a greater sense of intimacy with that particular person. So in terms of the script that's written in the book, you're sexually harassed, there's a line, and to be clear, you just crossed it. My request is that you apologize to me and assure me it will never happen again. If that is not okay, so that, and I would even pause at that moment, because when you request, so that's another script in the book, as my request is. You can ask that, and my request is the report be due at 3 p.m. on Friday, or you can say my request is that you apologize to me and assure me it will never happen again. Pause. Give them an opportunity to share what's coming up. So if they refuse to apologize or make amends at that point, if that's not agreeable to you, I will escalate the situation to HR or my boss, and they will determine the next action steps. How should we proceed? How should we proceed? So when I actually saw a conversation, a forum on LinkedIn around this. And the original, and I'll read you the original script, because a woman was really bold and she shared what happens if something like this happens to her. She shared the following. There's a line, and to be clear, you just crossed it. One of two things is going to happen next. Either you apologize to me and assured it will never happen again, or I have a conversation with HR, my boss, and they'll assure it will never happen again, and tell me the consequences you can expect if you repeat this.
That sounds very threatening.
Yes. So, and so rightly so, this in this particular forum, women were asserting there's definitely a repressed anger. And so absolutely. And when I read it, I'm like, hey, wow, that's really powerful. How can we reframe this? How can we revise this where it's a win-win conversation and not a threatening conversation? Because what happens is, because someone does you wrong doesn't give you the license to do them wrong in terms of threatening. And in that particular conversation, if she says that to the person, the perpetrator, then it is a very much like a conflict. And the only way when there's conflict is an escalation. It becomes a me against you conversation. When it's turned into a we conversation, again, even softening, how the first one that I shared, it was softening. She was very, the person who said that is very, there's a line, and to be clear, you just crossed it. My request is you apologize and assure it never happens again. So you still are powerful. You are still standing your ground, but not only standing for yourself, you're standing for the other person. And then they have a chance to respond. And then then if they respond, I'll apologize. So sorry. I thought, we had that kind of dynamic, that flirting thing going on, however they respond, or if they say, forget it, then you can escalate it. But in a way, it's like, how should we proceed? It requires a certain courage, a certain intimacy and connection, and really standing for that person, as well as standing for yourself. The first one I shared, very neutral. The second one was combative.
And where does power come into this? Because if you are in a situation, maybe you don't have HR, maybe you're in a small company and the person you're talking to is your boss or your supervisor, and there is nobody else. So does this collaborative way of speaking, bringing people forth, does that play out in the same way, or does power come into it if you are not the person on a same level playing field?
If you're not on a level playing field, it's still the same conversation. And obviously, if it's your boss, it's still calling them forth and giving them the opportunity to remedy it. And whoever you can escalate it to, if there is an HR, if it's you and a boss, if it's just a 2-person company, obviously there's a dynamic that you're going to need some outside support. And to remove, unless there's an apology, unless there's a course correction, remove yourself from that situation. So part of this is, even if they do apologize, whether you're in a 2-person company or a larger corporation with the infrastructure of human, you want to notate what happened, and when they apologize, still notate it, the date and time. Keep it to yourself. And if it happens 2 or 3 times, then you can escalate it. Not even that. If it happens a second time, it's, escalate it and say it happened another time as well. But giving them a chance to create self-awareness that what they did was crossing the line, and how can they and how can you together create a win-win.
And I know earlier you said it takes a certain amount of courage. What can you do to get that courage if you're a non-assertive person who feels vulnerable in the situation?
Yes. So this is what the book is about. It's giving you the scripts. It's supporting you with the bridge from going from voiceless to having a voice. It's tools. It's 40 tools in this book. And in addition, an emotional intelligence toolkit for what does it take for you to be the person you want to be. And part of that is it's leadership distinctions. And when you are in a place where you are working for a company, if this happens to you, because I have a distinction in the book, did it happen to you or did it happen for you? It's digging down deep in the moment. And another tool in the book is my truth in this moment is. That's even something you can add to the script. My truth in this moment is there's a line and you've crossed it. My request is you apologize and assure it doesn't happen again. So that's digging into vulnerability. And the alternative is being a victim. My invitation for everyone who's listening to this podcast is to step up 100% responsibility in your life. 100% responsibility that when you take a stand for that other person, because we're talking about leadership, they might be your boss or someone senior to you or someone on the same level you are in the particular company. You are taking a stand for them as well as yourself. That defining conversation could be a difference in their life and the way that they operate and the way they treat other people, other women, other colleagues, what have you. So it's definitely digging deep.
I sometimes wonder if there's such a long history and such habit involved that people need the gentle reminders. Because if someone has made jokes or made comments, for 20 years, and suddenly the Me Too movement is around, everybody's more aware, it seems, and yet they forget and do, make some comment or whatever that rubs somebody the wrong way. I wonder if it's the reminder, the way you're using the script, it seems like a more gentle reminder, because we all need to help each other figure out the best way forward, I think.
Absolutely. And it's all context. And so with the hashtag Me Too movement, there, are comedians, there's obviously different types of industries. And there's also, there's so many different lines, and some lines are lower and some lines are higher in terms of tolerance level. Maybe you have a relationship with someone where you guys go back and flirt back and forth. I mean, that's just the relationship you have with, or there's comedy going back and forth. And so it's when it feels uncomfortable, or when you feel your job is at jeopardy, or your livelihood is at jeopardy, or it's affecting your marriage, or how you're operating in the world. It's chipping away at your self-esteem. So it's a really case by case basis. And so it's an agreement, and that's the thing. These are boundaries being broken. So in a corporate environment, there is agreements, written agreements, when you work for someone, that you you maintain appropriate behavior, and anything inappropriate is not tolerated. Now, if you are in a consulting, or if you're working for a family friend, there's all different agreements. So you want to make sure that the agreements on the onset of the relationship are written down, are noted. And if it's a loose relationship in terms of you're working for a family friend, and then it takes a different turn, and it's not comfortable, then it gets to be approached at that moment. So it is really bypassing fear. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway when it comes to being courageous, because you could be working for a family friend and then it turns sideways, and it's like, we don't have this agreement in place. And so you've crossed a line, and I would like to make sure that moving forward that we have a definitive line on how we will operate moving forward. I appreciate you. I appreciate the work. And I want to make sure we have a professional relationship moving forward. And it really does require like a breath, like collecting your thoughts, coming from a neutral place, not letting the hurt, the shock. I mean, there's going to be shock. There's going to be hurt. There's going to be like, well, I get to collect myself. And in that moment, take a moment to process. Maybe it's a few minutes. Maybe you need a day. And you're going to request, we just had an interesting exchange. I need some time to process this. And so even getting that out, but again, in a neutral way, in a reactive way, it's, whether it's explosive or there's however you react to it, you want to, the invitation here, the invitation is to take a breath and either request some time to process the interaction or speak into it at that moment so you can take a stand for them and support them in course correcting.
So we're going to take a break in just a moment, but when we come back, I'd like to ask you about what to say if you notice this happening to someone else. So we'll be right back.
Are you procrastinating? Do you want to start a job search but aren't quite sure where to begin? Is it all just a little overwhelming? At Careers by Jen, we have a 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge to help you get unstuck and move toward finding your dream job. Every day for 5 days, you'll receive an email to your inbox that asks you to complete one task. Every task you complete moves you closer toward your goal. The best part about this challenge is that it's absolutely free. Come over to careersbyjen.com and you'll see the 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge on the right-hand side of the screen. Click on the image of Jen, sign up with your email address, and you'll be 5 days closer to reaching your goal. Why wait when you can get busy? Visit careersbyjen.com after this podcast.
So I'm speaking today with Alicia Dunams, and we're talking about what to say if you are sexually harassed at work. And so, Alicia, I want to ask you about what do you do if you see someone else having their line crossed? Should you do something? What would you do in that situation?
That's a great question. And if you are at work or in a particular situation and you see what you believe, because again, it's your perspective, what you believe to be an inappropriate conversation, gesture, the next step is to speak to that person.
Which person? Which person?
The person you feel is victimized.
Okay.
So in that particular situation, you can say, my perspective or from my experience, I see that there's an inappropriate dynamic happening. Do you need my support in any way? It's another script in the book. Do you need my support? Because when you see someone in fight, flight, or freeze, or maybe someone you feel isn't able, at that time is not able to step up, you can really listen, support them, and then asking a question, a clarifying question. My experience is, you can share your experience. Again, your experience, your perspective is colored by your own biases, your own past. And so it might not be inappropriate for them. She might be fine with that dynamic. He might be fine with that dynamic. And then just say, is there any way I can support? And if they request support, then the next thing would be to support them in any way. The number one way to support is to listen.
Right.
So that would be my suggestion in that particular case.
And that would be more appropriate than barreling in and addressing the person who has said whatever they've said in the first place, because again, you're coming at it from your perspective and not the person who was spoken to in the first place's perspective.
You're taking away their power because you don't know the circumstance. You might only have a little bit of the information. You don't know the entire context of the situation. And if you don't know the context, it's inquiring, It's even maybe saying I don't want to be prying, and I also want to make sure I'm here to support you if there's any support that you need, because this could be a coaching opportunity, and it's really saying, can I support you? Can I support you? Or when if they do request, it's like, I have a suggestion. Would you like a suggestion on this particular dynamic that I saw? And that way you're not attached if they take your suggestion or not.
So you suggested documenting things that happen. And would you document this even if it seemed to have resolved in the moment?
Yes, that's interesting. You can document it by writing it down or just taking a mental note. It matters what you see. And so I think it's in this particular situation, if it was something that was alarming, when you see, I have a friend who she does training. She teaches people how to think like the CIA. She does this really cool training for corporations. And she says, when you see things unusual, it's either a threat or an opportunity. A threat or an opportunity. So really, we have something instinctual inside of us. And so if we see something unusual going on, it's like, okay, how is this a threat or how is this an opportunity? And so just again, being in the question. So if you see something unusual at work, how is this a threat? How is this an opportunity? And so in this particular case that you shared, it's an opportunity to just ask a clarifying question, checking in and seeing if everything is okay.
Yeah. I had a situation, and it wasn't a sexual harassment in any way. It was just one of these stereotypical bad jokes that the minute I met somebody, I'd never met this person before, and this person came over and said, I got to tell you a blonde joke the minute he met me. And it was kind of crass, and it was not funny, and I just found it really rude and annoying, but there was really no line crossed. And I just didn't know what to say. I looked and I said, oh, great. And I sort of smiled and then tried to find my exit as fast as I could. But I don't know if language can help with a situation like that.
Absolutely. We find ourselves daily in situations where there's inappropriate or just awkward conversations. I mean, a lot of times people are awkward because they don't know what to say. And so maybe he wanted an in to introduce himself to you. And so he thought being a joker was a way to do that. And so I was at a Kinko's once and I walked in and I'm exotic looking. People never know where I'm from. And so what did this guy said to me? He said, wow, you're exotic. Where are you from? And I said, and I knew it was because he wanted to talk to me. So I feel we get to be forgiving of people because people really, at the end of the day, want to connect. They want to be seen and heard. And in this particular situation, he obviously wanted to speak to me. And I said, I'm from Sacramento.
It's very exotic there.
Yeah, I just answered. He goes, you don't speak Espanol. He started saying all this. And I go, wow, you have so many questions. You're a very curious person. And I said that to him. And then we got into a conversation. And so I played with it a bit. I wasn't offended. We get offended very easily. And we could, if someone says a blonde joke or a racial joke, I mean, he could have said something to me that had a racial, what I saw behind the energy behind it was a playful energy, was a curious energy, was I want to talk to her energy. And so I wasn't offended. I rather kind of gave him the same energy back, just saying, wow, you were really curious. And so if there's an awkward conversation at a family reunion or at when you meet a new person, it's match their energy and match their energy to a point. If someone is hurtful, if someone is rude, if someone is in an attacking manner, I say hurt people, disempowered people, disempower people, and angry people, anger people. So whatever, how their ways of being is basic what's going on in their life. And so if someone's hurting you, they've been hurt themselves. So how do we counter that, if you will? And it's by being loving, because loving people love people. And so by supporting them, because maybe they're so used to you getting back at them, it's like, I'm going to hurt this person and they're going to hurt me back. And it's this is back and forth. No one wins in that situation. It's like, just kind of play with him. It's like, wow, that's an icebreaker.
Yeah.
That's an icebreaker. and just say, what's your name? I appreciate coming over and talking to me. And then if it gets weird or anything, you it's moment by moment. It's every moment we have a choice point. And if it's a funny, weird conversation, you're like, I want to exit. Just in a kind way. It's been wonderful speaking to you. I'm going to speak to other people in the room. I came to network. I wish you the best.
Yeah, and it was basically, by the end of the couple of days, I knew absolutely there was no harm intended, right? There was absolutely no harm intended. It was, and lots of people were getting the jokes. And but it was just one of these, the very first moment of meeting, it kind of took me aback. And I thought, where is this going? But I think it was, as you say, it was in a playful attitude. So when you're at work, how do you move past a situation like this? If you have told someone that they've crossed a line and you've made the request for an apology, and how do you move past that? Like, how do you carry on if you have to work with this person the next hour, perhaps? Are there ways do you talk about it again? Do you just leave it and carry on? What's the best advice there?
Vulnerability is the best advice. When they apologize and say, I'm really sorry, I was out of context, I thought that's the kind of relationship, just say, totally understand. I just want to take a stand for you, and I want to make sure that I'm comfortable at work. And I really appreciate you. I acknowledge you. Thank you for apologizing. That takes a really amazing person to be able to be aware of that. And so it's vulnerability. It's creating, and then with that, when you're like going back and forth, that creates a greater sense of intimacy with that person. And that's how you continue. Now, if they don't apologize, or obviously it's going to be escalated at some point to a boss or HR, and talk about it this way. I mean, you don't have to doesn't have to be walking on eggshells or crickets or weirdness. It's talking to them as a person. So if it escalates and you're still in a working environment with them, being forthright and sharing with them. I know it was escalated to HR or what have you. And being open and just say, my truth in this moment is when that happened, this is how I felt. And I just wanted to share with you how I had these particular thoughts. I had these particular feelings when this happened. So being you, not hiding, not being full of shame, bringing your whole self to work. There's a book by a friend of mine who just wrote this, Mike Robbins, Bring Your Whole Self to Work. So it's being authentic and being you, and just definitely not being apologetic for taking a stand for yourself and the other person. Because
you want to be able to continue and to move forward.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to be stifled. Otherwise, you're going to catch. You're not going to use your voice again. You're going to be on this like weird. Nothing creative happens from that. Nothing innovative happens from that. So it's getting clear and having a clearing with that person. So what I was suggesting is, like, I know we had this incident last year, what have you, and I noticed things are weird between us, and I just want to have a clearing with you. I want to take 100% responsibility for my part in it. And what you can count on me moving forward, or what I hope for this relationship moving forward, is that we can connect and ideate and have further collaboration, because I know both of us are working for the good of the company and enjoy what we're doing. So how can we create a collaboration? Clearing the air, very important.
And I know that saving face is important for people, especially if they realize that they have crossed a line, maybe even before you say that to them. And so my instinct would be to always have this conversation in private, not in front of other people.
Oh, absolutely. You want to make sure that you have any clearing conversation, there's a line to be clear, you just crossed it conversation. Any of these type of conversations, you want them in private to assure that both of you can really share your feelings and you feel safe.
Right, because there's nothing worse than having somebody say that in front of a desk full of people or a space full of people and then feeling like you have to defend yourself or save face or something.
Yeah, that doesn't lead to the result that we want.
No.
That's calling someone out and not calling them forth. And you want to call them forth and ensuring there's a safe space for both of you to share.
What surprising things have you noticed since your book has come out?
People are moved by this. People, from the speaking events I've done, lunch and learns, to podcasts, etc., is people are feeling that it's not only a book for communication, whether it's self-communication or communication with relationships, your colleagues at work, but it's a deeper cut in terms of communication on a social and political plane with what's going on with the Me Too movement and other movements that are happening concurrently right now. And so we are social and political beings. We can't hide from it. We are on social media. Everyone has a voice. Everyone has a means to broadcast. And because of that, conversations are being had. And feelings are getting hurt, and not on just a level of, they're being broadcast. Disputes are being broadcast. People's careers are going down in flames, being broadcast. And so what's really powerful here is do we really want someone else's career to come down in flames? Now, there's a context to it. So we have examples of the news that absolutely people have done criminal acts, and they get to, and I don't want to use the word consequences, but they obviously get to, I don't want to say pay the price, but it's an opportunity for themselves to come forth and do the time that is required for the criminal act that they committed. Now, in terms of, we all have something in our past or something we've made a misstep or what have you, is do we want everyone's careers to come down in flames? Do we want, when we call corporations out, like, for example, the Dove campaign or this campaign that did a misstep? I mean, every week we're hearing about a company, Starbucks, that something happened. Do we want the corporation to go down in flames, or do we want the CEO to go down in flames, or this person to go down in flames? Or do we want to open up a conversation where this doesn't happen again, where we can all rise and learn from this and become better people, become better corporations, become better nations? And so that's what we're talking about here. So it's a deeper cut than what you say to someone at work or what you say to your child. It's what kind of stand are you going to take for your home, for your business, for the corporation you work at, and for your nation and for the world. It's what type of leadership stance are you going to take? And so I think that's what's coming up. And I'm not. It doesn't interest me to see people go down in flames because something that they did. How can we use this as a learning opportunity that we all grow and all learn? And that's what I'm looking at.
So I can see you because we're doing this over Zoom, but the listener can hear you, and there's passion in you, in your being around this topic. What lit that flame to head down this road with people and to help change people?
Wow, I don't know. I'm on fire right now.
I can tell.
I will admit. And I get to add that I wrote this book in 15 days. So it's a 217 page book. I wrote it in 15 days. And I feel the reason I wrote it so quickly is because people want this. They want deeper connection. They want intimacy. They want to relate to people in a deeper way. And I want to read why I wrote it so quickly. And it's because I got the following comment on my LinkedIn when I posted a video about why you get to use I get to versus I have to. And the following, her name is Denise Taylor. She said the following. She said, "Thank you so much for the clip about I get to versus I have to. I founded the nonprofit We Get To after our daughter passed away from leukemia, and we experienced the power of turning our have tos into get tos. Her most incredible example being, I get to have chemo, realizing not everyone has a diagnosis, hope for a cure, or means for medical care. My life-changing get to came completely altering the course of my life. When we were about to gather with family and friends at her grave, I prayed for the get to, as I heard repeating in my thoughts, I have to bury my daughter. Please help me find the get to. Immediately, I was given a thought. Only one woman in the world got to be Joanne's mom. She's the one who gets to release her back into heaven's loving care. Gratitude completely dissolved the sorrow." And then she ends with, perspective pivots are possible anytime by anyone. And so that, my heart imploded. Like I just felt so much drive and felt like I'm really like a vessel for this conversation. So like the downloads just came and I wrote the book so quickly. And this is after years of thinking about what book am I going to write next and book proposals that were half unfinished because I was not interested. So this just like came out of me. So I really feel I'm a vessel for this information and really supporting people and having deeper conversations, deeper connection, and supporting people who feel voiceless in having a powerful voice and could be able to support other people in that moment.
I'm glad you kept talking because you got me all choked up. That was beautiful.
I know.
Alicia, where can people find you and connect with you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you. I just want to acknowledge you for the work you're doing in the world of careers and supporting people. So thank you for this podcast. So people can find me at Alicia Dunams, LinkedIn, Twitter, what's the other one? Instagram, at Alicia Dunams. And then my website is aliciadunams.com. And if you want to write a book, bestsellertoweekend.com.
Sounds fabulous. What's your last piece of advice?
My last piece of advice is to ask yourself the question, did it happen to you or did it happen for you? The answer to that question will determine the quality of your life.
Thank you so much for being with Careers by Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.